Anime adaptations have become a relatively trendy topic as of late, thanks to a certain train wreck that aired this past season. And although I still had a fun time with the Horimiya anime, I found myself feeling more disappointed with it by the end. Seeing an adaptation of a series you may really like not turn out the way you wanted to guts you right in the feels. However, this video isn't purely focused around my thoughts on Horimiya's adaptation, but more on the complications with adaptations as a whole. Horimiya is just a recent example that I can use which wasn't god-awful. Before talking about Horimiya though, I want to introduce two of the most common perspectives that people have when adaptations of their favorite series are made. Back in 2020, webtoon adaptations were hyped to be one of the biggest things to come to the anime scene and were going to change the entire landscape. We're now in 2021 and there's not a single mention of them anymore, because the anime adaptations ended up flopping and were below expectations. But what was interesting about this time period was the infighting that was occurring between fans of these webtoons, like Tower of God and God of High School. One side was simply glad that an adaptation was even made in the first place, and the unappeased fans should just be grateful that it exists. While the quote-unquote ungrateful fans felt as if the animes that were made didn't do their beloved series justice, because the source material was crudely handled. I definitely side with the fans critiquing the adaptations, since at the end of the day, the goal of an adaptation is to improve upon the source material that it's adapting from, and that's not such a simple task to handle. Of course, there's always people out there that are practically micromanaging and taking it too far. At first, someone may say that the animation studio already has source material to go off of and it should be easy to make some tweaks to improve it. It's not that straightforward though. The biggest challenge from adapting a manga or light novel or whatever the source may be is getting a firm grasp on what that series is all about and being able to transfer that to a different medium, in this case an animated adaptation. It's inevitable that content will be skipped and shifted around and art won't look the same for better or for worse. But whether or not those changes elevate the original work is up to each individual who watches the show. When it comes to Horimiya's adaptation, the anime does a decent job at capturing Hori and Miyamura's dynamic, and making their relationship feel different from other romance series. The side characters all have likable personalities that help complement our two main characters, but of course there are issues that I have with them that I'll bring up later. Also, many of the heartwarming and comedic moments that Horimiya is known for were included and done relatively well for the most part. Albeit, a lot of that praise has to go to the source material for doing all of that work in the first place. In general, I could imagine that for an anime only, the wholesome cutesy moments and development of our main couple would be the most important things to get right for a rom-com. Cloverworks managed to make a one-to-one adaptation of the art, which honestly looks great, and they did a really good job. The art is relatively simple but unique in its own way. Even some of the music that they use could really help set the tone in a scene. Overall, the adaptation does get some aspects right. However, this is where the positivity ends, unfortunately. But I'll get into the negatives a bit later. I want to focus on the idea of an adaptation being one-to-one and how complicated the process of adapting material actually is. I just mentioned how Cloverworks did a one-to-one job when it came to Horimiya's artwork, but sometimes even one-to-one jobs with artwork from manga wouldn't exactly bode well for animated adaptations. Attack on Titan is an incredible series, yet I don't think you'll find people disagreeing that Isayama's art at the start was pretty rough to say the least. Wit did an amazing job to elevate Isayama's art from the very beginning. There are multiple series that all benefited in the same way. With Mob Psycho 100, Bones managed to stay true to one's art style, but add tons of their own flair into the final product. Demon Slayer episode 19 broke the internet, and Jujutsu Kaisen is the most recent textbook example. The problem with those shows I listed is that they're not exactly easy to come by, and there are adaptations out there that are one-to-one for the sake of getting people to just go read the manga or light novel. This doesn't even have to apply to just anime though. One-to-one adaptations never end up doing well because most of the time, they don't make changes to adapt to the medium that they're using. The Lion King live-action film is a prime example of this. It kept all of the original material, but due to its transition to live action, it lacked all of the soul and charm of the animated film. Food Wars ended up becoming a meme for being a literal slideshow where the studio just added color to the manga panels and just threw in panning shots all over the place to act as the animation for the series. That's something that people are capable of doing by themselves if they dedicate the time. There are so many of those colored Attack on Titan chapters up on YouTube that get millions of views for doing the same thing. The only differences are that the animation studio is on a tight schedule and cannot be as detailed with the art, while the people who create those videos are able to purely focus on improving upon the artwork while adding color. It can be conflicting to see low quality adaptations because most of the time, people don't know who's really at fault for the weak adaptations in most cases. And personally, with how rough animators have it in Japan, I find it hard to really hold anything against them. It could be that the staff was changed around and replaced with more inexperienced members who were readily available. Maybe the producers and higher-ups put the staff on a really tight schedule and didn't give them enough time. Or, worst of all, no one really cared about the adaptation and decided to put out a half-assed show. Although I think the last one is pretty rare, it's still an unfortunate possibility to consider. This now brings us to the negatives that were within Horimiya's anime adaptation. The anime really doesn't do much to try and elevate the manga and is more one-to-one. Many of the issues stem from the awful storyboarding and pacing that were present throughout the entire series, but even more glaringly obvious in the second half. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if there were anime-onlys out there who felt like the series was moving at the speed of a bullet train. A lot of the drama that Horimiya attempted to do fell flat, because it would be over in a matter of a few minutes. Even some of the romantic moments between Hori and Miyamura felt like they were rushed and not as effective as they were in the manga. Ever since I saw the poster promoting the anime with characters that are introduced in the 40s and 50s of the manga, I became increasingly concerned. Trying to figure out what chapters were actually adapted was as confusing as trying to understand how X-Arm got the green light to be released to the public. And Cloverworks basically killed the possibility of a season 2 by adapting the last chapters of the manga for the final episode. The side characters have likable personalities, but to dedicate entire episodes to them seems a bit much, since the main draw is Hori and Miyamura's relationship. Even the crazy love square that's going on between Ishikawa, Yanagi, Yoshikawa, and Sakura got more screen time than Miyamura's backstory. No one can fully blame the unnecessary focus on the side characters on the anime, because the manga does the exact same thing as well. Regardless, Cloverworks could have reworked their storyboarding in order to adapt more Hori and Miyamura-centric chapters, or even add some anime original content to flesh their relationship out even further, or to make the drama more effective. There's so much that could have been done. Vinland Saga is a great example of making these kinds of changes. Thorfinn's childhood was shifted to the beginning of the anime to make the events of the story flow better, and understand how he became the revenge-craving, dual dagger-wielding edgelord that we all know and love. And his backstory got fleshed out even further with anime original content. I understand anime-onlys who really didn't have a problem with Horimiya and had a really great time with it, but the anime reminded me of why I don't like reading mangas that haven't been adapted yet. It makes the experience of watching animes less fun in a way, because even if a studio is taking liberties and making changes to the material, they may not necessarily be changes that you end up liking. We've even had situations like High School DxD, where the 4th season changed up its art style to be more faithful to the light novels, and even that caused controversy. It feels more liberating not having your brain constantly make note of differences between what you're watching and what you read, and which of the two did it better. It can sometimes affect people so badly that they'll go and harass a studio and the staff members simply because they didn't like how something was animated. Although from what I've heard recently, I think many people are going to be begging MAPPA to make some changes in the upcoming season finale. I'd rather live in ignorance of the source material and not know anything at all than possibly fall down that rabbit hole. Of course, I still want to be able to read and experience many of those amazing stories that have yet to be adapted, but watching Horimiya reminded me of why I'm skeptical about reading mangas that may not have an adaptation now, but could receive one in the future. Anyway, that pretty much wraps up my disjointed, nonsensical rant about anime adaptations. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, as it would really help me out. Subscribe if you want to see more, and let me know what you thought of Horimiya's anime in the comments below. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.